Hello, everybody. Father Scott Vanderveer here with a second installment in our series on light. And today I'd like to speak with you about storing up light. Everyone knows that plants make their food through photosynthesis. We might not know how it all works, but we know that it is sunlight that feeds plants, that they take the light in, and then they store it inside themselves and turn it into energy that allows them to grow and thrive. Plants live off of stored light. And humans do too, but we don't often think about that. I think a lot of us, when we are in this holiday season, as we celebrate the season of Advent, we wind up thinking about a lot of loved ones who have been with us and gone on to God, people who we cherish the memory of. Memories are themselves stored light. When you remember someone the way I often remember my beloved grandmothers, my Dutch grandmother in the Finger Lakes and my beloved Bocce in Troy, when I think of them, I live off of the light of the memories that we made when they were alive. Those memories connect me to them, warm me, feed me, nourish me. And so memory is one of the ways that we store light within ourselves. It is the memory of the days of summer, the bright days when I would be swimming in Lake George or in Lake Luzerne, the days when I would go to Father Liam's house there on the Hudson River and jump off of his dock. When I think back to the nights where I could sit in my backyard with friends until 10 at night and still have it be a little bit bright out. When I think back to that, I am feasting on the stored energy of those times, of the light of those times. And so that is something that all of us can do in a more directed way whenever we're experiencing darkness, is to feast on that. I've actually heard people say that Facebook can be a good way to do this during a hard time in your life. If ever you are feeling gloomy, looking back over your Facebook feed, over the posts that you have made, over your Instagram account if you happen to have one, looking back at some of the good times could be a way to let the light of happy memories shine on you so that that can help sustain you during the darkness of hard times. One thing that always helps us store light is the practice of our faith. Practicing our faith helps us to store light within ourselves. And it can be not the big events of faith. It's not the big events that really help us during a hard time. It's usually the day-to-day, the slow turning of the flywheel, as some people would say, pushing at the giant gear, moving it incrementally further and further and further. My faith has not grown the most from big cataclysmic events in my life, though those have given me a lot to learn about and chew on. But the biggest things in my life have been the day-to-day practice of faith, almost like kneading dough. You know, that like a cat who's on his or her owner's belly while they're laying on the couch, making biscuits, as I like to call it, that kneading, of the dough of life. It is applying the faith that gets us through to the hard times. That is what allows us to go forward. Recently, we lost a young father in our parish, and he has 3 young children. It is indescribable to think about what they're going through. And I won't belabor that because I don't pretend to understand and know it. As somebody who has not yet experienced that kind of loss, I can't know what that's like. I'll never know, since everyone's loss is unique to them. So I'll never know what his wife and his children are feeling. Through the gift of empathy, I can place myself in their shoes by thinking back to other times of hurt and anguish and devastation in my life. But I can't pretend that I know. But one thing comforts me greatly, and that is that he practiced his faith, and his family practiced their faith. And the week before his unexpected death, his children were at church with us. And we called them forward, as we do, to the carpet in front of the altar. And we talked about the fact that we were going to be talking about heaven that day. And that heaven is a wonderful reality about God that we don't fully understand, but that we trust in. And that all of us would one day live with God in glory. And then we blessed the children and sent them forth. And this father, who had no idea that that would be his last Sunday in church, sent his children off to talk about heaven, to read scriptures about heaven, to color pictures of what they picture heaven looking like. And there's a very tender picture of his youngest coloring a picture of heaven, not knowing that that was the very week that he would need to lean deeply into that. He was going to need to lean hard into his belief that there is a life beyond this life. Do you see? If those children had not been practicing their faith, they would not have heard that message. Or they might have heard it, but not in a way that brought it all together. Because after those children were learning about heaven, then they came back to sit with their parents and experience the consecration and the Eucharistic prayer, and to see their parents receive the Eucharist. They got to experience that. That is a remarkable gift that cannot be manufactured any other way. They were able to store up the light of that lesson and then have it with them as they went into the hardest thing they've ever been through. That is what practicing our faith does. They were not doing anything extraordinary that day. They were going to church and they were kneading the dough. But it just so happened that it's very clear that the dough that they were kneading is now the bread that will sustain them. So how about you? How does your practice of faith help you in the day-to-day? And how has it helped you store up light inside yourself, like a plant that needs it during the dark winter months? How could you adjust your practice of faith to be even more effective? What is it? Is it the amount of time you spend practicing your faith? Is it the intensity of the practice? Is it the duration? Just like any exercise, it could be the frequency or the intensity or the duration that makes a difference. And if you're plateaued in your workout, you have to do something different in order to bring yourself out of that slump. If we plateau in our faith, we have to do the same thing. What is it that God is calling you to in this season of practicing your faith? How can you more effectively be a plant that has stored up light and lives off of it in the dark times? Great questions for this Advent day. May God bless you all.